Habits are in essence your regular and stable patterns to your being. They're these slightly automatic things which are the accumulation of um, a lot of your past decisions, actions, and dispositions. And because of this, because they are sort of the accumulated weight of history almost, or they are sort of these karmic predispositions. They are sort of difficult to immediately shift in the moment. Particularly if we have sort of um, maladaptive habits, addictions and whatnot. These things are difficult to resolve because they stretch very far back. Perhaps years, decades, even sometimes. And on the converse, positive habits which have been cultivated for a long time, they'll almost become these effortless, automatic kind of things. You don't have to think about doing them, because they just become a natural and organic thing for your being to do. And so I guess sort of when you're sort of thinking about cultivating new positive habits and trying to um, eliminate negative ones, it's important to recognize that these things take time, and there are no real quick fixes. And in fact, I think a quick fix wouldn't be particularly desirable, because quick fixes are easy, and nothing really worth celebrating or feeling proud about is going to be an easy thing. I think difficulty with regards to sort of character development, in terms of really trying to consciously, raise your vibration, if you want to use that terminology, which some may find woo-woo, but you could put it in more sort of less woo-woo terms by saying you simply want to feel better and be better within yourself, and you want to be better for yourself, and as well, from extension, be better for other people. Um, if you feel bad in yourself, often that will sort of extrapolate out into your interactions with people, and it's yeah, the person who is most equipped to take care of yourself is yourself. You're the one who has to deal with yourself day in, day out, every moment. It's so it's important not to externalize taking care of yourself to some cheap or easy habit, or not habit, cheap or easy fix. It's I guess it sort of relates to the whole idea of taking responsibilities for yourself, which sometimes comes across as a charged thing, particularly politically thing to say. But it's that's a silly thing, really. To just throw out responsibility, and accountability. But responsibility and accountability are you cannot separate them from the whole question of habit cultivation. Being accountable to yourself, but also not putting on yourself excessive blame or shame for falling back into sort of old habits. Often when we do um, fall off the path with regards to a particular habit we're trying to eliminate or trying to cultivate, it usually does happen when we're in a stressful kind of situation. When we are in a stressful situation or kind of circumstance, we it sort of makes more arouse that desire for comfort, for escape, and for respite. And I think it's important to forgive yourself, when you do fall back into these sort of old patterns. Because and it's also important to zoom out and think about how progress is very rarely a linear trajectory. You know, they're going to be bumps and grooves, and the important thing is to, you know, not give in overly to the euphoria of maintaining it. You know, because you can get complacent when that happens. But it's also important not to become overly self-deprecating, you know, and feel just utter shame for, you know, falling off the path. So the important thing is to think about how when you fall off the path of whatever you're doing, that in and of itself is an opportunity to realign and to return to your more ideal version, your more ideal trajectory. And it's in that sort of that recalibration, when you get back into it, that's when you really strengthen those muscles of internal will. You know, like there's one thing of finding yourself in a terrible pit, but it's a whole another thing to be able to pull yourself out of it, and to know that you are capable of pulling yourself out of it, and that you are a competent person. And the only way in which you can attain that confidence from competence is to be able to act in such a way that your competence becomes self-evident to yourself. And in order to have evidence of your own competence with regards to regulating your habits, regulating your mind, and stilling your mind, and, you know, being able to sort of go from a bad place to a good place, you know, it requires the actual doing, you know, and that doing is difficult by its very nature, but I don't think we'd want it to be any other way, you know. And, you know, this relates to sort of the past videos I've been making on the nature of comfort and discomfort, and understanding suffering and adversity when you're engaging with your life. And I'm trying to sort of obviously normalize those things, and also call attention to the pathology of excessive comfort, because it is excessive comfort which really does atrophy yourself and your capabilities as a person. You know, I want to sort of, you know, encourage people to take on difficult tasks, and encourage people to become acquainted with and accepting of failure and, you know, bad things, because they will come, they always do. And in light of this sort of inevitability, all that we can choose is how we respond to it. And, you know, I try to encourage a sort of an attitude of detachment, which is, you know, similar to acceptance, but not just a detachment in the sense of ignoring it, but more of a transformative quality, where you look at your failures and look at your suffering as sometimes a signal, sometimes an opportunity to understand, but also sometimes there is simply, you know, random suffering, and suffering that seems to elude any kind of explanation. And that can be often the most challenging forms of suffering, because, you know, it seems to sort of provide evidence for the world being just a radically irrational place that does not care about you. But yeah, that's a whole separate discussion. It would sort of go into the whole problem of evil and how to understand seemingly random and unjust and excessive evils. But that's different to the topic of habits and cultivation of habits. But yeah, to sort of add some signing off sort of notes on this sort of question of habits. An important node in the cultivation of habits is the cultivation of your attention. And your attention is what you bring, is what aspects of reality you're bringing, you know, more focus, more reality to. And naturally, when you're trying to learn something new, you have to move your attention to it, to foreground it, to highlight it. And naturally, when you're getting distracted from the cultivation of your whatever habits you're trying to build, that distraction is a movement of attention away from the thing that your more idealized self wants to sort of cultivate, towards something that often is something that your lower or baser kind of desires want to, you know, satiate. You know, it's whether the distraction is your phone or whatever, like whatever thing is very appetitive, or it satiates certain desires on a sort of a lower level, I suppose, to use that sort of terminology. Whether that's food, fast food, entertainment, or something like that. And I don't think there's it's not to say that there's no place for such things, for resting and relaxing your mind, but we should understand that, you know, in certain respects we are sort of the accumulation of the things that we attend to. So it's important to be mindful of the things that you are attending to, particularly when we're trying to cultivate um, better patterns in our being, and trying to remove less desirable, less beneficial patterns in our being. So, yeah, maybe you've enjoyed that short thing. It's been insightful. Enjoy the rest of your day. Bosh bosh.